sprouting together.
So we bought an electric car.
And the chairs are so soft.
So the chairs are soft?
Yeah.
So first let's talk about why we bought an electric car.
Because it was so cool. Gas is bad for the environment. Electric car does not have gas at all.
So I was driving my work commute every day, which is about 20 miles round trip, in a Volvo XC90. So if you're familiar, that's Volvo's 7-seater SUV that weighs about 4,500 pounds. And when we really got serious about cutting down on our emissions, our cars were one of the first places that we looked to possibly cut down some emissions. Since I drive about 100 miles a week and Krista only drives about 20 to 30 miles a week, it made sense that my car was the one that we wanted to cut down on the most. And with an average of 18 miles per gallon, there was a lot of improvement to be made. And actually what disturbed us the most about my commute was that at 18 miles per gallon, I was actually emitting almost 450 pounds of carbon dioxide a month.
That's crazy!
So if you're trying to cut down emissions like us, that's kind of unsettling. So I got on the internet, I started researching everything I could about hybrids, electric vehicles, really anything we could do to change my vehicle. But you've got to remember, we're kind of an average middle-class family as far as income goes, so we couldn't just go haul off and buy a Tesla. Finding a really fuel-efficient car on a budget that we could afford right now was a big challenge. Now, I've never been one to take things slow when trying something new, so when I was researching, I knew I wanted full electric all the way. Fortunately, after a few weeks of researching and looking, a 2012 Nissan Leaf popped up on Auto Trader with 62,000 miles for only $6,000. So I went to the dealership, looked it over, test drove it, came back again with some intense negotiations, and finally we were electric car owners. So let's talk about a few of the questions most people have when they think about an electric car, especially the questions we had. How do you deal with the range? So the 2012 Nissan Leaf comes with about 80 miles of range at full charge, and since my commute's only 20 miles per day round trip, it really isn't that big a deal for me. I can totally see how for a lot of people, if you had a commute anywhere close to 65, 70 miles, that would cause a lot of anxiety in a car like this.
Yeah, like froze.
But for me, going back and forth from work every day, it's actually been perfect. I just plug it in every night when I get home, and by the morning, it's charged and ready to go. So you're definitely not going to be taking a car like this on long trips, vacations, or anything like that. But Tesla's actually coming out with cars with over 300 miles of range now, and there's cars on the horizon with even more than that. So it may actually not be that big of a deal in the near future. Second question, what's it like to drive?
It's weird!
So in short, it is a little strange when you first get to driving it. When you pull up to a stoplight and it's dead silence, that's a little odd. So here we are at a stop sign, and as you can tell, unless you have the AC going or a radio or something like that, it is dead silent. Nothing. And I really wasn't expecting it, but it really does sound just like a golf cart. It makes the little noise that a golf cart does. And the torque takes a little bit to get used to because it's instant. It's not like a gasoline car where you punch it and it has to downshift or there's a little bit of a lag. No, it is as soon as you push the pedal, it is going. So two perks I wasn't expecting are the AC and the heater. Since neither one of them is relying on the engine, they're both instant. Since the AC isn't relying on a belt from the motor and the heater isn't relying on engine heat, you have heat immediately and cool air immediately. Another question that's on a lot of people's minds when they think of electric cars is, are they cheaper to run?
Yes! Yeah!
So yes, they are quite cheaper to run. I've done the math with this one over the course of about a month driving it. It is way cheaper to run than the gasoline car I was driving before. You can see some of the math that I've done in the actual post, but all in all, I'm only paying about $8 a month to drive this thing. And with the math I did and the fuel economy that I ran, it's actually even cheaper than like the hybrids, like a Toyota Prius. Is there less maintenance? So far as I can tell, there is a lot less maintenance with an electric car. There's no oil changes, there's no other engine fluids, transmission fluids, none of that kind of stuff. Now, there is some differences to maintaining an electric car than a gasoline car. The main thing you've got to remember with an electric car is that lithium batteries are a little bit sensitive. You don't want to get them too hot, you don't want to get them too cold, you don't want them fully charged too long, you don't want them totally drained. But if you find the sweet spot with the way you drive and how long you charge, it's actually been pretty easy for me to keep them at a nice stable level. Probably one of the biggest questions on most people's minds is, are electric cars really that much greener than gasoline cars? So is this car more economical than Lightning McQueen? From the research I've done and from the math I've done with my own energy usage driving this car for about a month, the answer is a huge
Yes!
I compared the CO2 emissions per mile of this car, my old Volvo, and a Toyota Prius. With the efficiency numbers I got, this car, the Nissan Leaf, was actually less than a quarter of the emissions of the Volvo.
Yeah! Bouncy, 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 bouncy.
It was also a little over 1 pound of carbon dioxide per mile less than the Toyota Prius. Now, there's an argument out there that the materials that make up an electric car, like the stuff that goes into the batteries and the motor, are harmful to the environment to dig up and process. I have no doubt that this is true. But with the numbers that I just gave, you can see how it wouldn't take long for an electric car to overcome that. So this brings us to our last question.
I did feel it.
So yes, the video is almost over, but our real last question is, was it worth it?
No! I did too.
So yes, between the fuel economy, the emissions, and just how great it feels to drive this thing, it was absolutely worth it. And with electric cars on the rise that they are right now, I see no reason that they won't get cheaper, more accessible, and easier to use. So if you're considering an electric car, look into it, do some research. It's really not that out of reach for most people.
You don't have to end up with a Prius. Just use an electric car.
I'll do this. Look at that. Up too. Oops.
Mommy's on the camera.
Mommy's on the camera. She doesn't like being in videos, but she's here. And she's taking care of the kids, and it's been great. Say thank you, Mommy.
Thank you, Mom.